Hello. Welcome once again to the GHPC developer stream, this time for November 2023. As always, let me know if you can hear me or not before we get into it, because you never know. Sometimes OBS forgets. Alright, audio's good. Let's get into it. So, we just had an update for Halloween. It was also just the October update in general, but it was at the end of the month because of the amount of stuff that we had to do. It was a engine upgrade, which is not something you do every day. It was a lot of work. It started well before October, and we had been kind of maintaining two parallel branches of the game for some time now. Very frustrating, hard to deal with. Finally glad that we got it merged into one. What that means for everybody playing the game is, on average, you'll have better performance now. Probably lower RAM usage, probably lower CPU usage. If you have a low-end system, unfortunately, some of the tools that we had in the game to make your system cope with the game better are no longer in place, such as the vegetation LOD slider, but we'll be trying to add those back. We just had to change the vegetation system because the old one was causing a lot of crashes. I would say probably 80-90% of the crash reports that we had up until October were because of the vegetation system in the previous builds. So that's gone as well. Hopefully a new era of stability and higher performance. I know that we've got some upcoming content that we teased, and for anybody who missed that, let's see if we can get that going as well. Let me get the game started up here. Blake is usually here as well. Kavi. I'm Josh, action scripter. He is running late because he had to eat. That's I don't know who does that, but whatever he wants to use his time for, I guess. And I'm sure he will pop in here at some point. In fact, I think he's here now. How you doing, Blake? What's up?
Not too bad. How you doing?
Probably helps if I go off of push to talk. There we go. Alright, so we're here, we're good. Everything is groovy. How was your food?
Oh my god, it was so good. Necessary.
What did you eat?
Just burger. Standard American shit.
You know what I had for lunch?
Was it a burger?
It was a burger.
Yeah.
If anybody accuses us of having NATO bias, we can protest all we want, but we did just have burgers, like synchronized burgers for lunch on stream day, so I don't know. I don't know if we're beating the allegations personally.
If you got a better idea, I'd like to hear it.
People are saying you're a little bit quiet.
How about now?
You sound fine to me. I'll turn up my desktop audio slightly. I'll turn it up to... yeah, that should be fine. Okay. So, anyway, I need to start the game. I've just been going over the basics. We had the Halloween update. It was the engine upgrade. Very necessary, very cool. We're right back onto content now. And by content, I mean we're pursuing the roadmap items. Because as much as we like to just add little things here and there, we do have those bigger tasks that we laid out on the roadmap. By the way, if you haven't seen the roadmap, it's at gunnerheatpc.com. It's very useful for determining the general direction of the development. So we finished number 1 and number 2 on the roadmap. We're working on 3 and 4, which is infantry and Soviets in no particular order. And we've got several other things after that to get onto. A lot of work, and we're trying to move it right along. Let's get some gameplay going while we talk here. What should I play? Should I? Yeah, I suppose I should try to show the new stuff. It takes a minute to get through it, but let's do it. Somebody said they have a 3BM42 in their room, a mango. You know what? I would love to have a mango in my room. I only have this replica M829, which is from Maker Steve on eBay. It is 3D printed if you want one. I feel like I always get asked where I got it, so there you go.
You should really pay us for a sponsorship at this point.
Nah, it's... he cut me a decent deal getting that piece, so I'm all too happy to promote it. Also, the blue thing next to it is, if I drop my shoulder here, that is a bazooka round, an inert bazooka practice round passed down from my grandfather, who was a World War II and Korea veteran. Anyway, so this mission is unique, not only in that it's the first time that we've had a Halloween-themed piece of content. Previously, we only did April Fool's events, but also, this is the first time in a mission that things can be damaged just by act of God, the mission designer deciding.
If I see your gameplay if you haven't switched yet.
You are correct, because I didn't switch scenes.
Thanks, chat. Also,
my Stream Deck isn't working somehow, so let's switch manually.
I feel like this happens every stream at this point.
No, it doesn't happen every stream.
Every couple of months, at least.
So, I'm in this new mission. It's a night mission. This is going to be horrible for the stream. You can probably barely see what's going on. I've got my wingman tank here. He looks fine, but if I switch to him for a moment, you'll see that he is lacking all fire control systems, and he is stuck on a manual backup site with only the commander's night vision. So his tank is pre-damaged. That is a decision made by the mission designer. That's a new thing that we can do now. I don't think we'll do it very often, but it's in the toolbox. This mission is meant to be scarier than normal, so the NATO bias has been decreased somewhat. Game still looks about the same. There might be some subtle differences because of the engine upgrade. You might notice trees are slightly sharper at range, or the grass is slightly different or something. That's mostly unintentional. We tried to get it as close to how it was before as we could, but everything's always subject to change anyway. We're probably going to retune the terrain coloring at some point, because we took a trip to Germany in, when was it, September?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we should show off some of those images, actually.
Oh yeah, if you can find the comparison shots, I could show those on the stream. The mission locations. I know we had them somewhere around. Anyway, we went to some of the real world locations where the game is based, and took a little sightseeing tour. We got a pretty good set of photos and videos. We have a good idea now what the area looks like, and we may be able to tune the appearance of the game to match. Depends when we have the time, essentially, because our terrain and mission guys are always busy. Someone was asking what is in the next update. We typically don't make a habit of saying ahead of time, and since we just had an update so recently, it's not time to reveal anything yet. But as a strong hint, if you look at what's done on the roadmap, which is the first two items, and what's next, which is number 3 and number 4, you can be assured that most of our effort would be going toward those. It's not to say what order things will arrive in, but that's what's on the table right now. Also, if you already know what arrived in this last update as new content, you have a pretty good idea of what's close to being ready otherwise. So I've only encountered some trucks so far. There should be light resistance in the early parts of the mission, and then ramping up in difficulty as I get closer to Bravo 2-2, who are my friendly units I'm trying to break through to. I have the volume turned down so that I can talk and Kavi can talk, but if you play this mission, Longer Road, and you turn your music on in the game, you will hear a new track by Majoris called Broken Arrow. I like it probably the best, maybe second best out of every track in the game. It's a toss-up between that and Not One Step Back. That one's good. Point is, if you haven't heard the new music yet, don't miss it.
As we release new music, we also add those to the soundtrack.
Yes.
Feel free to grab that. It's up on Steam now.
Yep. If you own the soundtrack on Steam, you automatically get anything that we decide is worth adding. You don't have to pay again. You own the package one time and you just have it.
Get it now before we jack up the price. Nah, we probably won't do that. Or will we?
That is a slimy sales tactic called exigency. Or exigency. I'm not sure which way it's pronounced. But yeah.
There's a word to the thing I've been doing?
Yes. Yes. Now they call it FOMO, but it's been around for a long time.
Oh, okay then.
Where are the spooky lights coming from?
I feel coax isn't effective against thin-skinned vehicles.
Well,
that's why you shoot them with explosives.
Those particular trucks are set to have solid steel construction, and it's possible that they're overperforming. I don't know.
Snipe the driver. Yeah. Just 360 no-scope that.
This is the most scared anybody's ever been facing a PT-76, by the way. No, that's probably not true. They were probably pretty scary as an infantry support role in Vietnam, for example.
Oh boy. What wasn't scary in Vietnam?
You weren't there, man.
It's true.
Let's see. What else? I should be losing my night sights pretty soon here, so I'm gonna have to get ready to use the new fire support interface to call in illumination flares.
So what was the reasoning behind having events or triggered equipment failures?
At first, just to make this mission, but it's possible that we'll be able to do some persistent damage sort of stuff in future campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you've taken vehicle system losses and you have to jump right into a new mission, and we're tracking your specific vehicles, it would be useful to have a way to roll that damage over to the next mission you play. That's not set in stone, that's something we're just thinking about. There we go, night sight damaged.
Yeah.
So the point is, more options for the mission designer is always good. It's more interesting to have a variety of scenarios, even if we don't use it all the time. A mission where you're using a really good tank that's missing some of its good features it's something new and different, you know, so it always helps.
Definitely.
Oh my god, he said the thing. He said the name.
Every time the name gets said, I take a drink.
Yep. I'm now dead.
It's Coke, but, you know.
Let me see, should I switch to backup now, or nah? Not yet. But I will illuminate.
We had a $3 donation with a question. I believe it said, have you considered getting Meteor to do some soundtrack pieces? Are you familiar with the composer Meteor?
I'm gonna give that one a who megalol. I mean, I guess the answer is no. We have not considered that person.
Thanks for the donation.
Thanks for the donation.
Drop a link to them in the chat, and then we'll look into it.
I will say though, we're pretty happy with Majoris's work, and we're not looking for more composers right now. We do occasionally get people emailing or whatever and saying, "Hey, I'd love to make music for the game," but the role's already filled. It would be it's not out of the question, but it's not something that we're seeking.
I love the smoke on those illumination flares.
Yeah, Noop did a good job on that. Our VFX guy is consistently high performing. He's an artist.
Are mud or rivers or mines will be implemented, perhaps?
Interesting set of questions in one question. We've thought about all of those things. I'm not going to say which ones will or won't be coming.
They'd be cool, though. I'd say that much. I agree. Everything is a bridge destroyer if you try hard enough.
Alright, at this point, I'm not doing well at all. I've lost my track, half my crew. I'm gonna have to switch to the other tank. This guy's low on ready rack ammo, so I gotta restock. I've been so distracted talking that I forgot to use my foreknowledge of the mission to cheat. So I'm getting kind of the, almost the first playthrough experience.
You have beaten this mission.
Oh yeah, I've beaten it. I've beaten it legit and not legit, depending who you ask.
I've yet to beat it.
I think what you meant was, since your master gunnery skills are not in question, you didn't need to prove anything by beating it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And yes.
Just wanted to make sure.
I've yet to put forward the time to look
yeah.
at a particular thing.
A busy man like yourself, you know.
Yes. Business numbers.
Mm-hmm. So normally you would never drive through a town like this in a tank with no cover at night. It would be a ticket to RPG land, but we don't have RPGs in the game yet. Soon though. Because we've been working on stuff, and let me tell you, those things are nasty.
Yeah. As was just demonstrated, I didn't particularly see it, but will you remove the loading audio from the tanks when the gunner is killed?
Right now... so I'm not sure what the question is asking specifically. Because right now, you can't hear loading audio when the loader is killed. And if you mean literally when the gunner is killed, I guess you mean the loader would stop because there's no point. I don't know. Either way, I don't see any change happening immediately.
I assume when one of those people are dead, another person just takes up the load, and it just takes
yes,
a long amount of time.
When the loader is killed, the gunner is reloading.
Yeah. So there would still be audio.
Right. Right now, there's only
Everyone's
audio
dead.
Immediately after the round is fired, and it doesn't like retime itself. So it seems like there's no audio when you're reloading with a dead loader, but it actually just plays like at the beginning, and then you have to wait for the rest of the timer. It's not synchronized. We don't have like a slow reload sound yet.
Is running over soldiers in BRDM an option? Not yet.
Okay, I believe we're coming up on the end. Yep.
Destruction, houses, holes in the ground, etc. Is that in mind?
Holes in the
Yes.
ground? No.
Well, okay, partly. You got me there.
Yeah. You're not going to be doing like a Battlefield 3, throw a bunch of salvage charges in one place and make a hole kind of thing. You might get cosmetic hole in the ground, like a crater that's rendered in depth map or whatever, like a lot of games do to cheat. We'll see. Houses, it depends. If we can make a system where they look reasonable being destroyed, then yeah. Otherwise it would just be like blowing chunks off the wall or whatever.
I expect in a long enough timeline that'll be a thing.
Maybe.
But
It's a significant
really
artist
not
load.
Yeah, it's really not a thing that we'd like to do right now. We're focused on other core components. Can you show off the new fire support UI? Well,
I mean, I've been showing it previously. There's timers now showing what's happening. Do I not have illums yet? That's unfortunate.
fences and walls being knocked over would be cool. I agree. But yeah, it's higher artist lift, and there's a bit of a technical piece there that we have to implement.
You know what we really need?
Other things. Yeah.
What we really need is for someone to play the game, notice that you can't run through fences, and then say, hey devs, you should add fences being knocked down. Because we've never seen a fence in real life, actually. So like we had no idea that tanks couldn't just phase through fences, right? So it's actually really good that people come in to remind us all the time.
It's easy to forget that we're able to phase through fences too.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it's pretty confusing to navigate this world. Yeah. Thank you, chat. All right. I have encountered an impasse here. I am tracked with no engine, or am I tracked? No, I just lost the engine. Engine's destroyed, I cannot move. The remainder of the T-64s are out there somewhere. Let's go cheat and see where. Yep, there they are. They're just rolling around. I will not be able to hunt them down because I am stuck. So, this is a draw. But at least I didn't lose.
No repair kit researched yet? Different game.
What I am going to do is jump into the end after action review. Let's see if we can find out what got me. Yeah, that would do it.
Why is there no field repair? Because it would take far too long to even do the most simplest of repairs.
Yeah. It's not something we decided to gamify. There's certain things that we're willing to gamify and certain things that we stick with realism on. We decided that field repairs are best left in a realism kind of realm, which means there are none. Even repairing a track takes like a half hour with no enemy fire. So you're not going to be doing it in the combat zone while the mission's still going on. Here we go. This is what I wanted. So this is one of the tanks from Bravo 2-2. Got shot from 200 meters by a T-64A firing 3BM-32, which is a Soviet armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot round, anti-tank. It was brand new in 1985. It was deployed that year. This we decided to make this their top-tier round, the Soviet forces, and then they would be using 3BM-22 most likely as their main backup. They had tons of it when they run out of 32. That'll probably be reflected in the campaign. The interesting thing about 32 is, as far as we've determined from our research, it is a serious threat to the M1, especially the base model M1. But even the M1 IP, as you see here, at close range, at the maximum energy of that round, it will still smoke the turret armor. The composite is very good, but the Soviets were specifically developing rounds in the 80s, especially the late 80s, to counter that composite. This is going to be a bit of a shakeup to the power balance in GHPC. Right now, the Abrams is the unchallenged like power fantasy tank. It's facing outdated ammo, East German T-72s with old ammo. This is no longer going to be the only situation. Anytime you're facing Soviets, you'll have to actually try not to get hit, like you do in every other tank. And if you do get hit, there's a good chance, if it's within, I don't know, 800 meters, something like that, that you're not going to do much about it. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you're an Abrams player and you're used to kind of parking up on a hill and taking shots at everybody while they dink off your armor, can't do that anymore.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
Why is there no special armor in the T-64A in-game?
The model for the upper hull armor was accidentally disabled in that model. It's been fixed in development, and it'll be updated. That's
there
all.
You go, chat. This is the one good deed I do for chat today.
Yeah, the T60. Let's go look at the T64A actually. So there should be a layered composite glacis above these. Oops, that camera is way faster than I thought. Above these fuel tanks here in the front, there should be glass textile layers, fiberglass basically, with steel on each side. It's a composite sandwich, just like the T-72 has in the game. The turret is solid steel. This is the early configuration of T-64 armor, but I believe the equipment on the outside has been upgraded to 1981 standard. It's a little hazy when you deal with Soviet tanks and their variants. You can say, oh, this is an OBR whatever version, but they didn't even track it like that themselves. They just applied field upgrades where they could, and so we've done our best to replicate what we think is a pretty representative version of the T-64A. This will have a composite hull and a solid steel turret. It's not going to be the greatest tank on the defense. It'll be about equivalent to the T-72M. However, it fires much better ammo by virtue of being in the Soviet forces and having all of their best and, latest stuff. You can see at the time this tank was captured in this snapshot, it had its Luna illuminator on. That's that little red glow coming through the IR filter. In night vision, that would be a bright searchlight beam coming out of there. In fact, looks like all of them had the lights turned on because they were engaging. So that the night vision system on this tank is active infrared night vision using the illuminator searchlights and some night vision sights. It is essentially the same as what's on the T-72 in the game. No thermals, but as you can see, if they get within about 1 kilometer and they can see clearly, they're still plenty dangerous. Another notable thing, really quick, another notable thing about this tank, it's too old to have the equipment for guiding missiles. So the T-64A, much like the older T-72 models that are already in the game, cannot fire gun-launched ATGMs. It would take until the T-64B and the T-80B before that could be done. And the T-80B is confirmed to be coming to the game, but you'll have to wait a bit for that. So this tank is essentially Soviet version of the T-72M, and not that the T-72 isn't a Russian tank, but in the game, as far as the game's concerned, only East Germans had T-72s in this area, so this is going to be the Soviet equivalent of the T-72 in the game. What was the question?
My question was going to be a general one. As far as ERA goes, would we have started to see that for NATO and Soviet tanks in this time frame?
So ERA is always debated because it started to roll out right around the time the game is based. There are documents to suggest that there were T-64 BVs and T-80 BVs around in the Fulda Gap area. Right at the tail end of 85, they were starting to spot them with the bolts all over the turret to mount ERA on, but the ERA wasn't mounted. So theoretically, there were BV model tanks with ERA. However, we still decide which things we think are reasonable to put in the theater or not. And currently, we're leaning toward no ERA in the initial release of the theater. Now, we've always said that we're willing to go to new times and places after the main release of the game. So when we're not worrying about basic stuff like adding the multiplayer or infantry, we may take another look at that. Maybe there'll be a 1989 expansion or something. And at that point, of course, there would be ERA. But it's right now it's looking likely that the latest tank you'll see in GHPC on release is the T-80B with no BV package. And NATO wasn't using ERA at all in 85. I think it would take them until they saw the Soviets roll it out in force to try to respond. They ended up taking the Israeli Blazer ERA and making a variant of it for the M60 tank. But that happened somewhat later. We're not even going to touch that one right now. Any other interesting questions while we stare at the shocking sight of an Abrams being frontally penned?
Just the standard ones. When are other tanks coming? What about the French? Spelled with an asterisk in the middle of it.
Right. Sounds like they've answered their question.
Rare field modifications for certain vehicles? Anything like that?
There are already rare field modifications for certain vehicles. Let me see if I can find an example. I saw somebody asking about this the other day, actually, about making the vehicles different from each other. It might be hard to notice, but the luggage on all the bustle racks is randomized. They're not the same from tank to tank. And if you're talking about within a specific unit, like here's a platoon of tanks that always roll together, you're not going to see something like the number 3 tank in the platoon decided to roll a camo net just because they felt like it that day, and the other guy has a different paint pattern. So there's a limit to how much randomization of the tanks is reasonable, and we feel that we're at that amount already. What I was going to show was there are some randomized things already on the tank equipment that maybe are hard to notice. I'm going to see if I can shake some of them out here.
Will a tutorial be made for each tank in the final release? We'll have much better tutorials than the ones that we currently have, I would say, by the time 1.0 is out. But you can expect probably we'll have tutorials to work on any particular vehicle that we release as we keep developing.
Yeah, so there's 2 different tutorial type of things right now. One is the gunnery guides, which are in need of some updating because some tanks don't even have them. The other is the training missions in the Grafenwehr map selection. Those are pretty new. They only exist for some tanks right now because the rest of them can be kind of inferred from the ones that exist. It's possible that there will be more training missions in the future, or that we'll add some video tips or something. There's a lot that could be done there. But there's already a pretty fair amount of training material if you actually look. If you read the gunnery guides and if you play the training range missions, there shouldn't be a lot of questions left over. And if there are, let us know and we can try to fill in the gaps. Here's something that I was going to try to point out. If you look at the Abrams, for example, the last side skirt panel, right in the middle here over the sprocket wheel, this is the original configuration. It was a solid panel. It was kind of cut up on an angle, and that trapped a lot of mud, and it would end up encouraging the track to throw, from what I understand. They have that guard on the sprocket, the slotted circular piece, to try to keep it together, but it wasn't always sufficient. So sometimes there were field expedient modifications made to the tank. The crews would either remove that panel entirely, or they would cut it. They would cut kind of a gap. Most of the panel was gone, and that would allow some of the mud to fall out on its own. And if I've got any luck with my randomization here, we'll see one of those. Yep, so here's the field expedient modification. This is a cut side skirt panel. It's done pretty roughly in the field. Most of it's trimmed away. It would have been the crews doing it with a torch or a saw or something. And this design was pretty popular to the point that the engineers at, I think it was still Chrysler Defense at this point, I'm not sure when they sold to General Dynamics, they said, you know what, that's a good idea. When we release the M1IP upgrade, we are going to make that standard. So the M1IP came out with a factory pattern that was much like the field expedient cut. And then when the M1A1 came out, they smoothed out the lines a little bit, changed the angles slightly, and that remains the standard pattern to this day. That is one of the details in equipment variations. The other one is you can see some variation on T-72s, although I'm not sure if it's working right now. Like, smoke grenades are supposed to be there sometimes and not others, but I think they might be always on now. But aside from that, the T-55 does not always spawn with the same fenders. So these are the standard fenders. Ribbed metal, solid construction, no surprises. Let's get a mission that has a bunch of T-55s at once so we can see the variations. The East Germans had some different T-55 configs that they would use. One of them was to cut most of the skirt material out entirely. I believe it was to make room for a mine clearing plow or something like that. And then sometimes you would see the tanks with that cutaway just unrestored, just sitting there. And sometimes you would see tanks that had had their fenders cut and then covered up again with a mud flap that was bolted on. Both of those configurations are also in GHPC. So if I can find these T-55s. Alright, let's pause this. It's a lot of engine noise. Alright, so here we go. Right away we can see, here's an example of a T-55 that's had the steel cut out of a big portion of its front fenders and then replaced by a rubber flap. And then I shouldn't have to look too long to see an example of one that has been cut for extra equipment and then just left like that. So this is an example of the field expedient modification to the fenders, and it's been left as is. So there you go. There's an example of, yes, there are randomized modifications in the game. There's an example again. Original fenders, field expedient cut fenders, restored rubber flap fender.
Not gonna lie, I can't say that I ever knew this existed.
Well, not everybody has the same job. That's fine.
True. I'm mostly stuck in code mines, so.
You are our technical lead for a reason.
Hey! He said the thing. Take a drink.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna play a random mission and answer questions, because right now, if you're sticking around waiting to see if there's new content to show during the stream, there's not. We're making a bunch of pretty important stuff right now, but we only show things when they're ready, and I'm not gonna show a dev model driving around a dev level when I could just wait a few weeks and show the actual thing. But feel free to ask whatever you want. This serves as essentially a public Q&A, and we'll do our best. What's the important stuff? Yeah, exactly. Nice try.
Are there any new sounds being worked on?
There are. Yeah, there are both new vehicle sound effects and new crew voice stuff being worked on. Specifically, we're putting a lot of effort into Soviet crew voices right now because that's one of the big pushes we're doing. Just Soviet content in general. One of the reasons the T-64 isn't playable yet is that the crew voices are not quite ready. The other is that the fire control system isn't implemented. If you're not a tank nerd in the extreme, you might not know the T-64 has a sight system that was used in the T-72 as well very early on before they had a laser rangefinder. It is a coincidence rangefinder. In fact, you know what? Let's get an M60A1 up here so I can talk about this reasonably. Before laser rangefinders were common, there were coincidence rangefinders. In fact, let's see if you can see it on the T-64 model here. You'll notice on tanks that have coincidence rangefinders, they will have two optics, two apertures of some kind on the turret. The M60 has two bubbles, one on each side. The T-64 has a bar extending across the top of the turret with a sight at each side. It's probably hard to see in the dark here, actually. It's kind of like a rib on the turret roof going between the gunner's sight and another gunner's sight. Let's just pull up the M60, we'll see better. By the way, this is a new main menu option that randomly shows up once you've beaten the Halloween mission. The game has always had the ability to show random menu screen selections, but we've only had one for the longest time. It's been, I don't know, several years since the game had multiple menus. That was back in the prototype builds. Now you have the ability to unlock one, and this will probably be something that happens more in the future. The song is 1985 by Majoris. Let's grab M60A1.
In the main menu, is there like an M113 that's an older model than the one we're using in the game itself?
Yeah, there's a couple old models left in the main menu. We have actually new parked vehicle models that match the new in-game vehicles, but we haven't updated the menu yet. So I'm sure that'll be corrected at some point, because there's no reason to keep the old models around anymore. The new ones are better.
Yeah.
Okay. So M60A1 has these bubbles on the sides of the turret. They are used to provide two different viewpoints from a considerable distance apart, and then they both are focused on a point in the distance, a single point, and they form a very, very long triangle. And the width and length of that triangle allows the mechanical ballistic computer inside the tank to infer the range to the target. If you've manually focused those two optics at the same point, you can know the range. So let's go on the rangefinder site. Let's pick something to focus on. So there's that bush right by my crosshair. I can adjust my range, and that bush will become double image or single image, moving, kind of coinciding, like your eyes are becoming unfocused and refocused. Whenever the image is correct, focused like a single image, I can be sure that the range is pretty correct. And as you adjust your range manually with control scroll wheel or page up, page down, the image will change in your rangefinder. Let's use it on an actual target. But T-64A has a very similar mechanism, but it's a little different. It's the same operating principle, but the Russians, instead of doing this split image, or this ghost image, where there's like two transparent things that overlap, they decided to do a split. They have the top half of the sight coming from one aperture and the bottom half of the sight coming from the other, and they slide the images back and forth essentially as the focus changes. If you see the target as a coherent piece, it's not slid with its top half not matching the bottom half, you know that you're focused directly on it. Some cameras work like this too. They have optical rangefinders. So when T-64A comes out, it will have a sight that looks very similar to the T-72 sight, but instead of a laser rangefinder ring and laser rangefinder existing in general, it'll have this split image piece that you can flip on, and you can match the target into one image, and that'll give you your range. It'll still have the range wheel up top, it'll still have the ready to fire light. It's a very similar sighting system to what the TPD-K1 on the T-72M1 is, because that was an update of it. Ooh. What do we have here?
Zoom.
That is MiG-21. Very cool. Anyway, When T-64 comes out, it will have the T-72's sight, the early T-72's sight, which means it will look very similar to the existing T-72 in the game, but no laser rangefinder, and it'll have a little split image ranging window that you can turn on that lets you match up the target range. It'll be pretty cool. It'll be different. People who like the M60 gameplay will probably like that as well. And if you don't like it, at least you have a really strong round. At least you can fire through BM32. And if you can survive long enough to actually line up your range on an Abrams, you can probably kill it. Might notice another change. We slightly modified the voice controller. Well, we significantly modified it on the code side, but you won't notice that in the game. There are some bug fixes and some changes in the game as a result, one of which is now your gunner only announces on the way when he fires. The reason for this is in real life you're supposed to say on the way and kind of fire at the same time, like you fire when you say way. But in the game we can't make people fire at the correct time. So the previous method of just saying on the way as soon as the command was ready usually ended up with the gunner saying on the way and then a long pause while the player lined up their shot and then the firing. We decided it was just more realistic overall if we waited till the trigger was pulled. So some crews would probably correctly point out, like, no, you're supposed to say it first. I've heard crew members say, I never cared about that, I just said it while I was firing. It's subjective, but I think overall it fits better this way. What do we got question-wise?
How are the coincidence rangefinder images rendered? Is that through shader?
Yeah, it's through shader. That's why there's some imperfections sometimes, like there will be warping or the range won't seem to match. We're using tricks to make it so we don't have to do two cameras, because the game's already heavy enough on one camera. Yeah, the shader trickery involved is pretty interesting if you're into that stuff. It has to deal with the depth map, and I think it works pretty well considering that it's actually not a true double image, or double render rather.
Certainly looks fine to me. I don't use it all that much.
You're not a M60A 1 Giga Chad?
Nah, I eyeball all my shots. And they land.
Curious.
I sent a document with X. Did you receive it? This is not the place to ask that. But if you sent it through the standard research channels, more than likely we have received it. We just don't have the time to look over all of them.
Yeah, we
eventually.
receive whatever is sent. We don't necessarily respond to everything, though.
Yep.
We look at stuff. If we think that it's worthy of taking into account, we do so. If not, we don't.
You could let on the way be yelled out if you hold the fire key. More than likely, the way it is fine enough.
Yeah, I think I like the way it is. I'm not a fan of adding extra control complexity just for the hell of it.
Are you drunk yet? There were many GHPC lines so far. First off, no. Second, I'm not hearing them, so I'm just gonna save my liver on this one.
Imagine if we actually did that for a stream, so every time that happened during the stream, I have to stop and go, oh, he said the thing, quick, get it, drink.
I do a charity stream. Every time GHPC gets said, I would donate $1 or $10 to something.
We'd be here for hours on one mission.
But like 5 dudes will really like that feature. That's quite a lot of game development, frankly.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool to get feedback, it's cool to get suggestions, but in general, we know how we're putting these things together, and we have thought about several of the ways and how they're going to work out.
Yeah, there's kind of a delicate balance involved because on the one hand, we like that people are excited and, it's cool to see ideas and inspiration being thrown around. But on the other hand, we're the ones making the game. We're the ones that had the idea. It's kind of our artistic vision. So there's very limited space for suggestion or whatever to actually matter. As strange as it might seem, that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, and that's with a lot of things. When we get told about bugs, we have a completely different way of looking at it.
Yeah, bugs we try to take care of.
It's obviously not supposed to be working that way. We want it fixed.
Yep.
But as things get put out there, as they bake a little bit, then we can see, what we thought was nice doesn't actually work out very well.
Mm-hmm. Feedback that's not about bugs matters in the aggregate. Yeah. So if 50 people say, hey, this is kind of annoying, we can think about it. If one person says you should consider doing this, that doesn't register.
What was it that we did a change for that with? I think we had an accessibility option. We had several people telling us that it, due to their arthritis, they didn't like holding down the.
Oh yeah, that's the invert palm switch option.
Yeah.
Yeah, for people who couldn't hold down right mouse or whatever they had it bound to. In fact, it used to be not rebindable either.
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't think that was anything until people started asking us, hey, this reminds me of these older games I used to play, but, it would be cool if I didn't have to do this the whole time. So we took that into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Someone said, have you heard about the game 83? Sounds like a neat game to do joint development with. Joint development is a fantasy. It does not work. You have to be in literally the same engine and the same framework and everything and have an API developed, and it takes pre-planning.
A lot.
I wish them success. I hope that, their vision becomes reality, but there is no world in which there's a joint development. Same for DCS, same for Steel Beast, same for anything that people ever suggest. Completely unrealistic, will never happen. Sorry.
So we're not doing anything with Diablo 3.
Yes, as sad as it is. I know people have been asking for it.
You could have just told me not on stream instead of just putting it out there.
Instead of crushing you in front of everybody.
Very unprofessional. GHPC dating sim. I mean, that's what I'm here for.
Mm-hmm.
GHPC World of Tanks collab. Never. Never. We'll be able to command a squad platoon to take routes with the map, like in Steel Beast.
We have ideas about that. I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah. Potential. Will we have cute uwu anime tanks? See, that's when modders come into play.
Obviously. Can you have a tank game without cute uwu, whatever you said?
Yeah, y'all can go ahead and do that. We don't have to explicitly support it.
Uh-huh. It's a well-known historical fact that there were cute uwu anime tankers in Germany in 1985, so obviously that's coming to the game.
Really, that's just the pin-up girls of 1985.
Oh god. That's legitimately a thing now, though. There was a joke about Zoomer tankers using anime girls instead of old-fashioned pinups. I've seen the shit that Zoomer tankers post now. It's actually real. It's actually true.
Oh my god. Please throw us a bone and give us some infantry news and info. We are actively working on that, and we hope to share something with you before the end of the year, as far as info goes.
So there's not a complete... Yes, there's not a complete info blackout, but it's limited. For example, high-tier patrons, cast tier I believe it is, who get the exclusive dev channel, were recently shown some funny screenshots from infantry development. But there's very limited info that we're sharing right now because all the stuff is still in bug fixing and we're revising animations and there's all this stuff going on. So we're not ready to show stuff, so we're not showing stuff. It's pretty
Final
much how it
question.
is.
Final question, because we have a Q&A to get over to.
Yes, we do.
How large is the Radian simulation team? Buzz.
Let me get my phone off the desk before I ruin everybody's ears. How large is the team? Okay, so the core team, the actual company, Radian Simulations, is 4 people. There is an additional, largely full-time member, so you could say there's roughly 5 full-time members. Then there are a handful of contractors. I want to say we have, what would you say, 5 or 6 people working on the game on contract at any time?
5 to 7, but yeah.
Yeah, so on average, there's about 10 to 12 people working on the game, half of which are part-time.
And for a game of this size, that is just the smallest team ever, frankly.
Yeah, sometimes I'm surprised that we're attempting it with the resources that we have, but it's going fine so far.
Yeah. I think that can wrap this up. If you guys want to keep supporting us, or if you just saw the game for the first time and you want to go and check it out, it's over on Steam, as well as the awesome soundtrack with all tracks produced by Majoris. If you just want to get some more info and see what we're up to and get more access to the devs, we have a Patreon with multiple different tiers for that. And if you want anything else as far as like support, communication, my favorite burger to eat, you can go to our Discord, which is, all of these are linked at gunnerheatpc.com.
Yep, the Discord is a pretty cool place. The Patreon is if you're feeling like going above and beyond. You're not going to get, back in the day there used to be like, you could only get certain features in the game if you were a patron. That's no longer the case. Some patrons get early testing builds, but otherwise it's just a way to show support and get extra sneak peeks, if that's something that you want. There's also merch. Let's not forget that. That's linked on the Discord and also on the main site, I think. So if you want a t-shirt or something, I've got a poster behind me with the logo. There's a few goodies on there. I think there's stickers, mugs. So yeah, there's all kinds of options. And if you just like the game and you want to buy it on Steam and play it, that's cool too. That's all we want. So
telling us about bugs in the Discord, even, that's just a huge help.
Yeah, there's a feedback channel in the Discord. There's a public GitHub for issues if you want to make a more organized one and provide logs and that kind of thing. Yeah, all the links are in the on the website or in the help section of the main menu. In fact, yeah, I'm here, right here. I suspect not a lot of people click this button. If you click this button, you get the how to play, you get the gunnery guides link, you get the bug reports, and you get a link to the Discord. You can get to everything from here. So, there you go. In any case, that is all we have time for. We're going to jump over to the Discord for the patron Q&A, which always happens every month, whether there's a stream or not. So if you are a member of that, we'll see you in a few minutes. Everybody else, thank you for coming, and we'll catch you in about 2 months.
Bye-bye.